What's up, Ramblers? Your favorite CEO is back. And before we begin today's podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. And follow Assistance HQ and Offsource HQ across all platforms to stay up to date on the latest content, updates, and more. And remember, if you need a virtual assistant, visit us at offsource.tech. Now, before we begin, a word from our sponsor. One of the one of the biggest ones I've seen a lot of people fall into is not properly vetting the remedial virtual assistant. So, for example, we before this have recently talked about the gap difference in terms of skill and perception that a fractional resource might have versus a virtual assistant. And so when people hear the gurus online on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on Twitter say, hey, go hire a virtual assistant, they're talking usually about Fiverr, Upwork, or your $3 to $5, $10, $15 virtual assistant. This is The Ramblings.
Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in for today's video interview. I'm Tony Restell from Social-Hire, and delighted to be joined today by Angelo Roberts Jr. We're going to be talking about using virtual assistants and resources in your business, and also the importance of having great processes in place if you want to scale and be successful. And so, Angelo, thanks for joining us today. Do you want to just start by telling everyone about yourself and your business, and then we'll dive into today's question?
No problem. Thanks for having me today. My name is Angelo Roberts. I come from across the pond, so I'm here from Connecticut in the New England version of where you guys are. And I am the owner and founder of Offsource. We are a one-stop shop for handling any and all of your outsourcing needs. We're a Connecticut-based startup. We've been doing this for about 3 years now.
Awesome. So let's dive straight in and let's talk about the advantages of using virtual assistants or fractional resources, fractional staff in a business. What are some of the things that you see with all the businesses you work with that make this a really good route to go down?
One of the biggest things is definitely cost, right? In this day and age, it's so very hard to not only find an employee, but keep an employee. A lot of the people that I've talked to now, it's just always saying it's so hard to find somebody that can work. And so whether you're using fractional employees, fractional CFOs and stuff like that, or just regular virtual assistants, it allows for any business to just keep not only their overhead a lot leaner and small, but also just keeping their actual salary and wages to a respectable amount.
And I guess also gives a lot more flexibility in that cost as well.
Absolutely.
And here in Europe, we have long periods of time that you have to keep staff if you decide you need to downscale or whatever.
I did
So
not
that
know that. What are so I guess in regards to how it would be for people within UK, the flexibility portion of actually just having the employee as well as the actual laws around it. So I'm not 100% familiar with the laws of W-2 employees within the UK, but I do know that it's not only just different that you guys have a lot more standard vacation days, there's like a lot higher minimum salary. And so with virtual assistants or fractional resources, it allows for you to have a much more flexible cost, but a lot more flexible in regards to your time and how you go about hiring based on the laws of the land within the UK around wages and employees.
interesting. And the flip side of that, pitfalls to be aware of for any business owners out there thinking of going down this route. What are perhaps some of the things that you have to keep in mind if you're going to do that? What are some of the pitfalls to make sure you don't get in
One
trouble?
of the one of the biggest ones I've seen a lot of people fall into is not properly vetting the remedial virtual assistant. So, for example, we before this have recently talked about the gap difference in terms of skill and perception that a fractional resource might have versus a virtual assistant. And so when people hear the gurus online on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on Twitter say, hey, go hire a virtual assistant, they're talking usually about Fiverr, Upwork, or your $3 to $5, $10, $15 virtual assistant. And so because of the price, people don't properly vet. And so what a lot of virtual assistants have done is they give the bare minimum work without actually giving you what you want. They completed the task, but they didn't give you what you want. And so one of the biggest pitfalls is to make sure that you vet any virtual assistant company or person that you're going to work with. Another one that you're going to want to do is make sure that you actually need it. a very big or a large portion of people that I see don't really need a virtual assistant and they don't really need a fractional person. They need better time management. And so what they have to do is look at, hey, what am I actually doing with my time? Because if I hire a virtual assistant, you're really going to see how much time that you were wasting and saying, oh, actually could have done that myself.
Fascinating. Yeah, I'd not thought of that before, but it makes perfect sense. And as a business owner, you're always looking at what am I spending my time on? What could I delegate? Do I really need to be doing all these things? So yeah, really interesting point. We were talking just before we came on air, businesses to really nail their processes and start having standard procedures for doing all sorts of different things in the business. Any advice you can give around that? How would you recommend that business owners go about creating processes in their businesses? What are some things to focus on? And yeah, again, any pitfalls?
So it really depends on not only like the level of the business. So are you in your beginning stages hiring? Is this something that you hired people and don't have these processes and now you'd like to get them? So it really depends on what stage you're in. The very first thing, I'll just break it up into three different categories. Hiring your very first person. If you are listening to this and you're hiring your very first person, take 1, maybe 2 weeks to just make a list every single day of what you did that day. What actually do you do on a day to day basis? And then spend an entire week looking at that list and writing a step by step instruction manual for how to complete that singular task that you did in that day. So, what you'll actually also find is that you're only really doing 3, 4, 5 actual tasks in a day because when you break down the step by steps of those, you can now see, okay, from 10:00 to 10:05, 10:05 to 10:10, 10:10 to 10:30, the actual time increment that this process takes. So you just take 1 to 2 weeks, write down every single thing that you did during those 2 weeks, and then write the step by steps in order to complete those. If you are a little bit more tech savvy, you can use software like MemTime or just any kind of time tracking software coupled with manual creating software. So basically, it records your screen of what you're doing on a computer. A lot of the things we do nowadays are going to be on the computer. So it will actually record what you do and create a step by step based on your click path. So let's say you would like to create or send out contracts for certain people. What this will do is say, hey, you went to this website, you went to this file, you clicked on these docs, you sent it to this email, which was accessible from this database. And then after that, you did X, Y, Z. And so that software will automatically create that for you. But having that documentation before you hire is extremely important. Now, to swing it to the other side, if you have already hired people, but you're finding it hard to keep track of what they're doing every day because you didn't have these processes in place, it's going to be a little bit more difficult and you're going to want to do something slightly different, but the same thing. You're going to want to ask each one of your employees to track what they do for the entire week. Now, depending on the size of your organization, you must let them know that you will not fire them. Because anytime an actual employee hears, hey, I need you to start tracking everything that you're doing, especially if they weren't doing it before, in their head, that's going to get them anxious, nervous, and you don't want them to do a bad job thinking that they're going to get fired. You don't want them to
Mm.
try to screw you thinking that you're screwing them. So you're going to want to just say, hey, you're not being fired. We're just trying to get a lot more organization in place. We just, for the next week, want you to track what you do. And then again, in that following week, have them write the step by steps down for each of those things that they did. And so those are going to be what you want to do if you don't have those processes in place.
Really interesting. Thank you. Angelo, for anyone who wants to find out more about this, how you guys work, has any follow on questions about either virtual assistant or setting up a process like this, what's the best thing for them to do?
The best thing you can do is either start by trying to decide, do you really need a virtual assistant or any kind of these services? As I had mentioned before, a lot of people get to that point and realize I don't need it. If you realize that you do, you can always come to offsource.tech. There's Fiverr, there's Upwork, a lot of great places to find quality lower end virtual assistant. But for that one stop shop to handle everything within a nice budget friendly manner, offsource.tech, where we handle all of your admin, bookkeeping, social media, graphic design, web design, and more.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Bye for now.
Hope everyone has a great week too.
Hey Ramblers, that's it. Podcast is over. Don't leave yet though. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on YouTube at OffSource HQ. We'll see you next time.